So what about the epidemiological transition at phase 3? This is called the age of degenerative and man-made diseases. Those again are Omran's words. I personally, being a septuagenarian, hope that I am not facing degenerative diseases, but it is actually the case that as you get older, your body does become less able than it was when you were at a younger age. Mortality continues to decline, eventually stabilizing at very low levels when life expectation may exceed 80 years, 90, even up to 90. And survival, and this is very important, improves across all ages to retirement. 75% of us in the developed world, of each cohort born alive, will reach more than 75 years. So, even though mortality is at very low levels until old age, for a statistical reason, the crude death rates may be high, as the population will have aged, what we're going to be talking about in Module 4. But with a high proportion of the population at old ages, these are the ages at which the risks of death are high. Now I want to show you a series of graphs which will be picking up the points that Omran raised. The first of these is a very general and, I must say, somewhat complex one, and I don't want to go into it in absolute detail, but you can see on the left of this graph, in stage 1, when the growth of the population is high but stationary, death rates are high, and the total population numbers are not growing. They're almost stable. Then we start to see an early expansion as the birth rates remain high, but the death rates start to decrease. And finally, we move to the other side when once again stationarity is achieved. We'll be picking up this point in the next module, by the way. And we get low growth, stationary population, as we call it. That is, the deaths more or less are the same as the births in number, and mortality is low. And we may even get populations, and when you look at my notes, you'll see this picked up in details, so you'll be able to go into this, where the population is declining in numbers. Natural decrease may be negative, as you may recall I cited you last time for Italy. The example that Omran gave was Germany. He was talking about federal Germany before the unification. Now, turning to the next two graphs, what one sees here in the epidemiologic transition is the change in the mortality rate. And he has two things on this. One is the decline in the communicable diseases, and then the growth in the non-communicable. And also that this is related to the mortality rate. So the higher the mortality rate, the higher the proportion of the deaths that are going to be due to communicable causes, whereas the lower the mortality rate overall, then the non-communicable become more important. And finally, to get these graphs is the force of mortality. And I think this is shown by this graph, which all it does is it compares, it really is a ratio between the proportion of deaths under 5 and the proportion of deaths over 50. And as you can see, there's a net change which occurs in this. So the force of mortality changes from the younger ages to the older ages. Now, this is the end of this particular section of today's module. I'm now going to move on to looking at how this had an impact on population dynamics.